the Omicron variant, the Delta variant. COVID is here. And remember, about a year ago, I told you that regardless of what kind of vaccines we have, regardless of what you're being told, that some sort of COVID was going to still be here. Some people listen, and some people were probably like, well, he's not Dr. Fauci, so let's not listen to what he has to say. But the fact remains that this is what I told you, that no amount of vaccines is going to eradicate COVID in the near future, because it's going to do exactly what I said. It's going to mutate, just like how any other virus has done over the past 100 or so years, or maybe in the entirety of our existence or the existence of mankind. It has done exactly what this is doing. It is mutating. But what did I say back then? Now, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching, but this is just what I'm pointing out, that regardless of what we've had masks and we have a vaccine, we still have a COVID situation which is proliferating around the world. But here's the common denominator that I keep stressing. Even in the advent of focusing on masks, everybody was wearing masks and COVID was still here. Now we have the vaccine where about 65% of Americans are vaccinated, and still COVID is still around and is still mutating. So the two things that I said that were not going to be impactful have not stopped COVID. But what I've always said and I've always maintained is that COVID is being transmitted through fomite transmission. And I explained in a previous video what fomite transmission is. It's by touching things, touching doorknobs, touching your door handle, whatever, touching the handle at a grocery store, touching a cart and then bringing it back home and touching your home. And that's how COVID is being spread around. It's not by people sneezing or people inhaling into the air, because if COVID was airborne, then we would all be in trouble. There would be no defense for it. Let me say this one more time, and I've said this on a number of occasions. If COVID was airborne, an airborne disease, like people are suggesting with masks, then there would be no defense for that. We would all suffer. Mankind would be pretty much over with as a species. So that tells you that that can be the answer, because if that were the answer with the number of people wearing masks, then we'd have a dramatic reduction, and it hasn't happened. It is through fomite transmission. And I go back to, again, what I said in a previous video, that back in 2003, when we had SARS-1, which was the first coronavirus that came from China, the protocol was not everybody wear masks, but it was everybody protect your hands. Now, they didn't minimize masks, but what they were saying was that fomite transmission was the way that this disease was being transmitted. So they nipped it in the bud right then, having people protect their hands, and it stopped. Back in 2003, that could have been the same pandemic that we have now, but those protocols that were in place were eliminated by the Trump administration. Now, I'm not blaming the Trump administration for this. I'm just simply saying that the focus has gone from the fomite transmission to masks. And this is what's happening. And I've said this again in a previous video. People have become vaccinated, and they have become like they're impervious to the disease. They stopped having good hand hygiene. They're doing every other thing they did prior to COVID, believing that simply because they have a vaccine that they are protected. But newsflash, and I've said this before too, just because you're vaccinated, that does not mean you can't get COVID. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that through the breakthrough situations where people are having contracting COVID, and they're not dying from it, and they're not going into ventilators or situations like that, but still they're getting it. And the reason why is because people think vaccinations mean that they're impervious, that they're protected from it. And that's just not true. They become lax in their hand sanitizing and the hand protocols, the things that I had suggested way back a year and a half ago that we should be focusing on, like wearing gloves or things like that. And even if you don't wear gloves, it's still imperative to have proper hand sanitization to keep this from spreading. People, please get this information around to your friends and relatives and whomever. Getting vaccinated and wearing a mask is not going to stop COVID from mutating and becoming something else. And it's not going to protect you from it. The thing that's going to make you as bulletproof as possible is to make sure you maintain proper hand hygiene. I suggest wearing gloves when you're out and about, but some people don't want to do that. But you have to keep your hand hygiene intact. You have to continue to use hand sanitizer. Don't touch things with your hands. Use a paper towel or whatever. When you go into a public restroom, do the same thing. You just cannot touch things with your hands and go home and you think because you're vaccinated that you're protected. That's how this is being spread. It's through fomite transmission. That's the reason why. Not because of people are breathing or sneezing into confined areas. Yes, that could be part of the situation or part of the problem. But the major thing is people are believing that they're protected because they're vaccinated and they're going around touching things. Just like before, when people were wearing masks, they were going around touching cars and touching door handles because they thought that the mask was the thing that was protecting them from COVID, and not the fact that they were touching things that were infected and they were bringing them back to their homes and to their family. So I would implore you to focus on your hand sanitizing protocol and make sure that you don't touch these foreign objects and these doors so that you're not bringing COVID back to your home. Get your booster shot if you've gotten your shot, or if you've never gotten a shot, get the shot. Yes, that's an effective deterrent, but it's not a 100% deterrent. Nothing is 100%, but if you have your shots and you're protecting your hands through proper hand sanitization, then you are up in the game and you can be pretty safe when you're out and about in the public. I'm Dr. Feelright. Thanks for listening, and as usual, have a great day.